Every story has an origin, and yours begins long before you understood the meaning of destiny. It begins in a small place, a quiet corner of the world where life felt heavy from the very start. You were a young dreamer, raised in an environment where scarcity was normal, where survival came before comfort, and where every day taught you something about resilience long before you even knew the word for it. Childhood for you wasn't painted with bright colors or easy moments. Instead, it was shaped by long nights, whispered worries, and the constant weight of responsibilities that should never rest on young shoulders. You watched the adults around? You carry burdens they never complained about, and in that silent endurance, you learned your first lesson. Life does not hand out ease, but it always reveals strength. The struggle became your teacher before the world offered you a single smile. Yet even in the middle of those hardships, you carried something ran inner spark, a restless energy that refused to be dimmed by your environment. While others accepted life as it was, you found yourself questioning everything. Why couldn't things be different? Why couldn't your world be bigger? Why did your heart feel too wild, too loud, too hungry for a life you couldn't even describe yet? You didn't have the answers, but you had the fire. You grew up with the feeling that you were meant for more, even if you didn't know what more looked like. You looked at your surroundings, the cracked walls, the tired faces, the unspoken dreams, and something inside you whispered that this wasn't your final chapter. You were born into limitation, but you refused to let limitation define you. As you got older, that whisper turned into a tug, a constant pull between the person you were expected to become and the person you knew you could be. You felt trapped between duty and desire, between survival and aspiration. On one side was the life you were taught to accept. On the other was the life your soul begged you to chase. You questioned not out of rebellion, but out of longing. You searched for meaning in moments that others found ordinary. You stared at the sky and wondered if the stars above you had a message, a direction, a path only your heart could hear. You analyzed every challenge, every failure, every heartbreak, trying to decode the lesson hidden inside. You were young, but your spirit felt ancient, as if it had been wandering through lifetimes searching for a doorway into something greater. The world didn't hand you a map. In fact, it often felt like you were walking through darkness without guidance, without certainty, without support. But even then, something deeper kept pushing you forward, a quiet determination, a hunger that no hardship could erase, a refusal to accept that your circumstances were the limit of your potential. With every setback, the fire inside you grew instead of fading. With every obstacle, your vision sharpened rather than blurred. You learned that dreams are not born in comfort. They are born in discomfort, in longing, in that restless ache that refuses to let you settle. And so, step by step, you continued moving, guided not by clarity, but by faith in the possibility of a better life. This was the beginning of your journey, the chapter where a restless soul learned to rise from scarcity, turn pain into purpose, and walk boldly into the unknown. It wasn't easy, it wasn't simple, but it awakened something powerful inside you, the belief that no matter where you start, you always have the power to choose where you're going. And with that belief, your story truly began. There comes a moment in every journey when life stops whispering and begins to roar. A moment when the challenges you once handled with quiet strength grow heavier than anything you imagined. For you, that moment arrives slowly, at first like cracks forming in a wall, and then all at once, like everything collapsing without warning. Life began testing you harder than ever before. Plans you thought were certain suddenly fell apart. Opportunities you hoped for slipped through your fingers. The people you relied on, the ones you believed would stand beside you, started drifting away one by one. Some left silently, others left loudly, but they all left. And with every loss, something inside you dimmed. Failures didn't come as single blows, they arrived in waves. One disappointment followed another, knocking you off balance until you no longer recognized the person struggling to stand up. You tried to push through, telling yourself it was just a phase, just a storm, just a temporary setback. But deep down, you felt something unraveling. Slowly, isolation wrapped itself around your life. The world that once felt hard but hopeful now felt cold and distant. You started questioning everything: your purpose, your direction, your identity. You wondered if you had been foolish to dream, foolish to hope, foolish to believe that you were meant for more. The same fire that once carried you forward now flickered weakly, barely keeping the darkness away. Nights became longer. Thoughts became heavier. You found yourself replaying every wrong turn, every broken promise, every painful memory. You convinced yourself that the problem wasn't the world, it was you. That you weren't enough. That you had failed too many times. That something inside you was inherently flawed. This is where the ego begins to crack, not out of weakness, but out of pressure, out of exhaustion, out of the realization that the version of you who tried to stay strong is no longer capable of carrying the weight. You began to lose yourself. Not in one dramatic moment, but in a quiet erosion. Day by day, your dreams felt more distant. The passion that once lit your soul felt unreachable. You stopped speaking boldly. You stopped taking risks. You stopped believing. You simply existed, moving through time without truly living. There were days when you felt so detached from yourself that it was as if you were watching your life from the outside. You felt empty, numb, disconnected. You looked in the mirror and saw eyes that carried both exhaustion and silent pain. You felt like a ghost wandering through your own story. And then came the darkest corner of your journey, the breaking point. It was a moment when the weight of everything you'd endured pressed so heavily on your chest that breathing felt like a battle. You wondered whether anything you did mattered anymore, whether your presence made a difference, whether it was worth continuing at all. This was the point where shadows whispered the loudest, where the world felt too heavy and your heart felt unbearably hollow, where you questioned not just your path, but your existence. It was the silent battlefield where countless souls lose themselves. But as painful as it was, this moment held something sacred, because when everything collapses, your plans, your hopes, your identity, something deeper is revealed. The breaking point is not the end. It is the doorway, the place where your old self shatters so the new self can breathe, the space where you are stripped of illusions, fears, expectations, and forced to confront who you truly are beneath all the layers. Standing there at rock bottom, you faced a choice. One that could either destroy you or remake you. And even if you didn't realize it then, your soul had already begun choosing. It was preparing to rise, preparing to rebuild, preparing to lead you into the version of life you were always meant to reach, one that could only be born after everything else had fallen apart. This was not your ending. It was the beginning of your transformation. When you reach the lowest point, when everything around you feels impossibly dark, something unexpected begins to happen. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly, like a soft whisper rising from the center of your being. It's the kind of voice you only hear when the world around you finally becomes silent. And in that silence, a spark returns. At first it's faint, a small flicker of hope, a reminder that something inside you is still alive, still fighting, still refusing to disappear. It doesn't come from anything external, not from people, not from circumstances, not from luck. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere sacred, a place untouched by failure or fear. Something higher pulls you back. You don't understand it at first. You're still carrying the weight of everything that went wrong, still drowning in doubt, still struggling to trust yourself. But the call from within grows stronger. It urges you to slow down, to breathe, to listen not to the chaos of the world, but to the quiet truth your soul has been trying to tell you for years. You begin listening in a new way. For the first time, you stop running from yourself. You stop avoiding the pain. You stop pretending you're fine. Instead, you turn inward. You confront the shadows you've ignored. You revisit the memories you buried. You acknowledge the wounds you never allowed to heal. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. But it is necessary, because as you peel back the layers you've built out of fear, you begin seeing who you really are. Not the broken version shaped by struggle, but the authentic self that has been patiently waiting beneath everything. You confront your trauma, not to relive it, but to release it. You confront your desires not to judge them, but to understand them. You confront your fears not to fear them more, but to strip them of their power. And through this inner work, something profound starts to shift. You begin to realize that the journey you thought was about achieving, proving, or winning was never about that at all. The world taught you to chase goals, chase validation, chase status, but your soul teaches you something else, something far more powerful. It teaches you that life isn't about reaching some grand finish line. It's about becoming the person you were meant to be along the way. You discovered that the failures weren't punishments, they were awakenings. The heartbreaks weren't endings, they were redirections. The people who left weren't losses, they were lessons. Every moment of pain had meaning. Every setback had purpose. Every detour was guiding you toward a deeper truth, your truth. And then, almost magically, the universe begins to respond. Signs appear. Small ones at first. Unexpected moments of clarity. Encounters that feel too perfect to be accidents. Messages that arrive exactly when you need them. Opportunities that align with your true self. You begin noticing synchronicities, those strange, beautiful moments that remind you you're being guided. Your intuition sharpens. Your clarity strengthens. Your heart becomes louder than your doubts. You start trusting yourself again. Not the old self built on expectations and fear, but the emerging self, the one aligned with purpose. Grounded in truth, connected to something greater. You no longer feel like you're wandering without direction. You begin sensing a path, a calling, a mission that is uniquely yours. And this time, you don't run toward it out of desperation. You move toward it with intention, with awareness, with courage. Your heart becomes your guide. And unlike the mind, which is shaped by fear, logic, and past wounds, the heart speaks through intuition, wisdom, and inner knowing. It leads you not where you should go, but where you are meant to go. In this awakening phase, you begin to feel the strength you forgot you had, the resilience you once doubted, the purpose you once lost. You realize that you are not the person who broke you, are the person who is rising. And though you're still healing, still learning, still expanding, one thing is clear. You are no longer walking in darkness. You are walking toward yourself. Transformation doesn't happen in a single moment. It begins quietly, almost gently after the awakening within you has taken root. You rise again, but this time you rise differently. It's not with the frantic energy of someone trying to prove something, but with the calm confidence of someone who finally understands who they are and where they're going. You step back into life with a new kind of strength. A strength that isn't loud or aggressive, but grounded, deliberate, spiritually anchored. You start by setting new intentions. Intentions born from clarity rather than confusion, from desire rather than fear. These intentions aren't about impressing others or reaching some imaginary milestone. They're about honoring your soul. You begin to align your actions with your purpose, choosing habits, people, and environments that nourish your growth rather than drain your energy. For the first time, you feel like you're reclaiming control, not by forcing outcomes, but by mastering yourself. You stop chasing validation. You stop seeking approval from people who never understood your journey. You stop allowing society's expectations to define your worth. Instead, you focus on something far more powerful. Growth. Real growth. Deep growth. The kind of growth that transforms you from the inside out and shapes you into the person capable of holding the blessings you once prayed for. You begin to realize that the goals you once ran toward were never the real destination. They were simply reflections of the person you hoped to become. Now, instead of running toward them, you grow into them. Cultivate the mindset, discipline, and emotional stability required to sustain the success you seek. You understand that alignment always comes before achievement. Discipline becomes a form of self-love. It is no longer a punishment or a burden. It becomes a promise you make to yourself every single day. You stay consistent, not because the path is easy, but because the path is meaningful. You show up even when you don't feel like it. You commit to your routines. You honor your boundaries. You protect your energy. With every disciplined choice, you shape your future. Your faith strengthens too, not just in a spiritual sense, but in a deeply personal way. You begin trusting the process, trusting the timing, trusting the lessons. You no longer panic when life becomes uncertain, no longer crumble when things don't go your way. Instead, you breathe, reflect, and move with intention. You trust that whatever is meant for you will never miss you, and whatever leaves you was never meant to stay. This trust becomes your stability. It becomes the foundation upon which you rebuild your life. The more you grow internally, the more your external world begins to shift. Start attracting better opportunities, better relationships, better conversations. You become more aware of what deserves to be in your life and what doesn't. You learn to let go gracefully, to say no without guilt, and to set boundaries without fear. You choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, purpose over distraction. Slowly, your mindset transforms, becomes sharper, clearer, and more resilient. You stop responding from fear and start responding from wisdom. You stop reacting emotionally and begin choosing your responses with intention. You replace old limiting beliefs with empowering truths. You stop seeing obstacles as threats and start seeing them as opportunities for growth. You begin creating your life from the inside out. Every shift you make within yourself reflects outward. You embody authenticity. You move with integrity. Your actions match your values. Your words reflect your truth. You no longer chase alignment to become alignment. And through this transformation, you discover something profound. The power you were searching for was always inside you. Just needed to break, awaken, and rebuild to finally access it. You stand now not as the version of yourself shaped by pain, but as the version shaped by purpose, resilience, and divine alignment. Now, you stand in a new space, a space that feels entirely different from everything you've known before. It is a place of awareness, strength, and quiet power. You have walked through fire, you have fallen into darkness, and you have risen through pain. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt has shaped you into the person you were always meant to be, the version of yourself you once only dreamed of becoming. You realize now that the journey was never about reaching a destination or acquiring external validation. It was about the transformation within. Purpose becomes your compass. Each day, you navigate life guided by intention rather than habit, by vision rather than fear. You understand that every choice, no matter how small, is an act of alignment with your higher self. You no longer drift aimlessly, pulled by what the world wants from you or what other people demand. Instead, you act from a place of clarity and grounded strength. Every step you take feels deliberate, sacred, and deeply connected to who you are. Peace becomes your reward. The storms that once rattled your mind no longer have the same power over you. You have built an inner sanctuary, a core of calm that no external chaos can penetrate. You experience serenity not as an absence of difficulty, but as a mastery of your response to it. Your thoughts no longer enslave you. Your emotions no longer control you. You have become the observer, the creator, and the guardian of your own energy. In this stillness, you discover a freedom that feels both exhilarating and deeply nourishing. Confidence flows naturally now. It is not loud or boastful. It is steady, unshakable, and rooted in the truth of your journey. You trust yourself, your intuition, your judgment, your ability to navigate life. You know that mistakes are not failures but lessons, that setbacks are not defeats but invitations to grow stronger. You no longer fear rejection, loss, or uncertainty because you recognize your own inherent worth. You have become a source of inspiration, not by seeking admiration, but simply by living authentically. Others are drawn to your energy, not because you try to impress, but because your life radiates integrity, resilience, and genuine presence. Gratitude becomes your lens. You see your past, not with regret or resentment, but as the tapestry that wove your soul into its current brilliance. You honor your struggles because they birthed your wisdom. You cherish the people who stayed, and even those who left, because every encounter carried a lesson that contributed to your awakening. Your eyes now see opportunity in every challenge, beauty in every ordinary moment, and lessons hidden within every hardship. Clarity guides your actions. The illusions that once clouded your perception have dissolved. You no longer chase things that do not serve you. You no longer invest your energy in relationships, situations, or habits that diminish your light. Instead, you operate from alignment. Your life begins to reflect your highest self. You create boundaries without guilt, speak truths without fear, and act in ways that honor both yourself and the world around you. And perhaps most profoundly, you understand that your story was never about suffering, it was about transformation. Every tear, every heartbreak, every moment of uncertainty was a teacher. Every challenge was a doorway leading you closer to your authentic power. You see, now that the universe was never against you, it was orchestrating your evolution. You finally stepped fully into the life you were meant to live, a life that reflects the fullness of who you are. You walk with purpose, grounded in self-respect, self-love, and self-trust. You shine not by trying to outshine others, but by allowing your own light to illuminate the path in front of you. You have become a living testament to resilience, to awakening, and to the infinite potential of the human spirit. This is the becoming, the moment where all the pain, all the struggle, all the lessons converge into a powerful, radiant self. You are no longer defined by the past. You are no longer limited by fear. You are the version of yourself you always knew you could be, the highest self, fully alive, fully awake, fully free.